So welcome everyone to AI Sweden and the Competence Strategy Forum, our open part of this session. We're very happy to see you today. My name is Ebba Josefsson Lindqvist. I'm an international relations manager and helping out with the forum today. So very happy to see you. And today we do have an international touch on the forum, and we'll have a glance at what's going on in Singapore when it comes to AI and competence. First, just a few words about AI Sweden. AI Sweden's mission is to accelerate the use of AI for the benefit of our society, our competitiveness, and for everyone living in Sweden. And a few words about the Competence Strategy Forum. So the purpose of the forum is to create this forum and platform where we can learn and explore how AI competence is developed and used as a competitive advantage for global, European, and Swedish, from a global, European, and Swedish perspective. The objective is to co-create, to collaborate, and take actions to identify focus areas, and to provide the Swedish AI ecosystem with a basis and a platform for strategic AI competence and build a plan for that. So the findings from the forum and the contributions that you bring will serve as a foundation for how we can also work with future learning initiatives here from AI Sweden and share it with the AI ecosystem. So just before I present our speaker for today, I just wanted to mention that we will not have a Q&A session in this part of the forum, so the first half hour. Some of us that are partners and are part of the closed forum will continue the session at about 11, and we will do the Q&A session there. If anybody is interested in joining the forum, we will share a link in the chat where you can sign up to become one of the members who is part of the exclusive forum. But we're very happy to have all of you listening in today to this part. But with that, I would like to introduce Juliana Lim, who is Executive Director of Community and Talent at SGInnovate in Singapore. And Juliana, she oversees SGInnovate's National Deep Tech Central Strategy. And that is connecting deep tech startups and talent with resources and opportunities to grow and scale. And before Juliana started her position at SGInnovate, she has over 17 years of working with leading human resource teams across large multifaceted organizations such as the Ministry of Education in Singapore. As a senior HR leader, she has worked alongside upper management and board directors in an advisory capacity, compensation of benefits, and learning and development. So Juliana, we are very happy to have you here today. We have over some time now built a relationship between AI Sweden and SGInnovate, and we're really happy that you can come and share some learnings from the Singaporean ecosystem today. So with that, I'll hand over the word to you, and please let me know when I should switch the slides for you.
Thank you so much, Eva. And yes, a warm welcome to everybody this morning. Hi, my name is Juliana. You can call me Julie for short, or you can email me whenever. And just please use Julie, because only my teachers call me Juliana. And when I'm in really big trouble, then someone will say Juliana. So generally, I go by my name, Julie. So just call me anytime you need some help. But thanks for the invite this morning and to AI Sweden. I just came back from the US, so I do apologize. I'm suffering from a bit of a jet lag and a brain fog. And if I say something that doesn't make sense, feel free to clarify or ask me questions at the end of the presentation. So as Eba did say, I've been with SG, or maybe she didn't, I don't know. I've been in SGInnovate for the last 10 years. So over this time, obviously, I've seen companies grow, startups grow. I've seen the AI landscape in Singapore grow. What started out as a very nascent technology in Singapore, just getting our head around, AI alone took some time. And over the last 10 years, we've seen the proliferation of the use of AI in many other sector domains, which we will go in further detail in subsequent slides. So maybe in the next slide. Okay, so just to give you a short introduction to SGInnovate, really our mission has always been and still continues to be about translating today's technologies into tomorrow's opportunities. Now, what does that mean? Really, it's about helping, founders translate the technologies and the knowledge that they have from the university setting and research into opportunities where we can translate that into industry. So if you look on the bottom left-hand square, the first square, the founders are at the center of it. Because we work with academic founders, typically, they could be starting up their first startup and going into this space for the very first time. So everything that we do centers around them. And because of that, early stage startups, we need to then help them in terms of both investment, early stage investment, as well as people. And especially in the areas of nascent technology where SGInnovate invests in and play in, even in traditional, venture capitalists, they might be unfamiliar with that technology. And so typically SGInnovate is necessary to provide a signal to the rest of the ecosystem that this is a technology domain stack that could be interesting for other VCs to look into. So we do that part, and I'll go into some detail later on. For the people bit, because these are very early stage startups, most of the time, most talent won't join them because they've never heard of this startup. Could be size 5, size 10, and really, is in a space where we would need to help them get the right people into their companies and help them scale and grow. So as you know, at any one point in time, SGInnovate has about 80 portfolio companies in which we directly invest in, both in Singapore as well as overseas. But the number of startups that the organization helps beyond just investing in them is in the hundreds. So my team really works with hundreds of startups in Singapore, even though we only invest in about 80 of them, like I said. The community in Singapore is quite strong. We have about 155,000 and growing constantly of people who have said either they are working in a startup, interested in a startup, or basically just wants to be involved in this startup ecosystem, right? In terms of the investment, we have invested about Singapore $90 million in our companies. But the more interesting fact and number is that we are able to catalyze over 1.17 Singapore billion dollars from other VCs and private investors to come in. So in terms of the follow-on investments, like I said, we are always the first to invest in nascent technologies, be it quantum years ago, AI years ago, but yet now everyone's talking about AI, everyone's talking about quantum. So it's a space that we are quite proud in, and I think, excuse me, we are quite strong in. So SGInnovate, because we're in the space of deep tech, we provide this one-stop gateway for anyone interested to get into what we call Deep Tech Central. It is many things to different people. To a startup founder, it's a place where they can potentially find a VC to be interested in their company. They could also find a talent to join their company. So there's postings where they can post their jobs, look for the next hire, connect with other founders, etc. For the talent-wise, when they get into Deep Tech Central, it's somewhere where they can upskill themselves, look for training providers, look at jobs that potentially they want to apply for, get connected to the rest of the ecosystem and what have you. And for learning providers, it's where we put in the deep tech training opportunities in Singapore in this space so that everybody is aware of it. Yeah, next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so our technology domain focus in terms, okay. So in terms of how Singapore looks at it, Singapore government looks at it, basically we have what we call Singapore's Research, Innovation and Enterprise Master Plan. And really this master plan refreshes itself every 5 years. Now, this current tranche is what we call the RIE 2025 Master Plan. It's 2025 because that's the year it ends, financial year. So we are in the last year of RIE 2025. We are now starting planning for RIE 2030. Like I mentioned, it's on a 5-year rolling basis. And this gives everybody in Singapore a broad direction of what the government has set its sights on in terms of research, innovation, and entrepreneurship. These are the 4 current domains, strategic domains that Singapore is interested in. And I think it's applicable worldwide. So around human health and potential, anything to do with, your health, diagnostics, etc., therapeutics. Smart nation, digital type tech, etc., your cybersecurity will all fall under smart nation and digital economy. Urban solutions and sustainability would be things like, nuclear, fusion, fission, like food, alternative proteins, etc. And manufacturing, trade, and connectivity would be basically anything that's around advanced manufacturing and whatnot. In terms of our investment focus areas, that would be pictured on the right, where we are looking at sustainability, agri-food, Gen AI, cybersecurity, advanced manufacturing, health, and biomedical sciences. For the talent and the people side of the house, we look at all 4 domains relatively equally. And it really depends because, sometimes in most cases, investment kinds of lead in terms of signaling. Now, just because they invest in that particular domain does not mean the people part will come in very hot and heavy. It could be that there are only a few startups in that space. So in terms of talent demand, there might not be so many. I give you the example of current, let's say we look at AI about 10 years ago. I would say the number of companies looking for AI talent, data scientists, etc., would be fewer than what we're seeing currently. And I think this is a pattern that we're seeing internationally as well. The next slide. So these are some of the highlights I thought I would share with you just to give you an understanding of SGInnovate's investment thesis. We have told you about 80 portfolio companies plus minus, of which 20 plus are in the AI space, and 6 of them have been acquired. So I think that is pretty healthy, where you showcase that, like I mentioned earlier, we invest in very early stage nascent technology. And when they've reached a certain stage of maturity, then the investment team will probably do less of the type of investment and move on to the next big challenge. So next slide. So these are some of the other AI investments that we have done, companies that we have done. You can see typically it starts from, seed all the way to Series B. Some of them are in later stages. And it's people often ask me, does SGInnovate only invest in Singapore-based startups? The answer is no. We do invest in overseas startups if it makes sense to our own local portfolio and it helps us in some ways get a better understanding of what's happening out there in the rest of the ecosystem. Right. So next slide. So just to give you a lay of the land, if you're not familiar with what's happening in Singapore, there's a few players that you guys really should know and be familiar with. In terms of at the ministerial level, then the Ministry of Digital Development and Information is the one looking at AI specifically. And within them is the National AI Group, or NAIG for short. And they are the ones that look into creating the right policies. They get feedback from the industry, talking to people like myself, different VCs, different startups, and just to get a sensing before they write their policy papers, basically provide some framework in which the rest of Singapore can, take some, gauge from. And then in terms of implementing AI initiatives and supporting AI adoption. For AI Singapore, specifically, their job just looks at how we can translate some of these things that the government has in mind into industry. For SGInnovate, like I said, we cover more than AI. It's all the 4 RIE domains. We, in terms of breadth, we do a lot more. In terms of deep dive, I would say AI Singapore would be the one that really does just focus on AI. Okay, next slide. So the evolution of Singapore's AI strategy started out with our NAIS 1.0. At that time, about 8 years ago, 10 years ago, it was about how do you then get people to have a better understanding of AI, the potential of using AI, right? What does it mean to the person's business or the companies, right? And that's where, AI.SG launched, for example, what they called 100 projects, in which they went about soliciting AI projects from big MNCs and large local enterprises to see how they can, get people interested into this space, get talent interested into this space. I still remember I was at the National University of Singapore and the AI.SG, and I was sitting there with AI.SG, and we were trying to reach out to the talent in the universities to get them excited about these projects, get them involved and not go into other more traditional roles that the typical Singaporean student would be interested in at that point in time. Of course, now, 10 years in, it's a very different matter. Everybody's talking about AI and whatnot. But at that time, it was a real challenge. The students were interested. What does this mean in terms of their future? And one of the professors, my friends actually at the Singapore Management University, he jokingly told me the other day that 30 years ago, when he was still in university, he did take AI as his major. So he graduated with that. But coming back to Singapore, he couldn't find a single job. So he had to transition and do something else, with his degree. But of course, that is not the case now. So that's 1.0. And now at 2.0, it's really about how do we then, become world leading in terms of AI execution, solutions at scale, harnessing AI for public good. I think, Eva mentioned about this as well for Sweden as well as for the world. Essentially, we are so small. All the startups that we are interested in, they should be solving world problems, not Singapore problems, because our population size is just they are tiny. So this idea of using AI for good and, end of the day with a limited talent pool, how can we harness AI to do jobs better? It's not about replacing jobs, but it's about enhancing, given that what we have, can we tap on AI as a resource for us to do some of this work, right? So I was in the US last week, and I was in an energy conference, and practically, okay, this is a traditional energy conference, yeah. So you're talking about oil and gas, pipelines and the transmission and whatnot. But literally every other person was talking about data, using data to make better decisions, using AI to predict certain things like potentially, land area forestation to clear, maintenance, etc., etc. So I think there's a lot more thought into how, rather than is AI going to be replacing us, it's more this idea of AI helping us doing our jobs better. Okay, so next slide. So some of the key plans for NAIS 2.0. So I have friends in the MDDI, and I think they've also shared this with me. Some of the things that they are very interested in doing, as I mentioned earlier, last time 1.0 was about building this understanding and getting people interested, etc. Now we are doubling down in terms of infrastructure, creating the right environment, developing people with the right skill sets, because these things change so fast and frequently, building capabilities, communities, and we want to have this conversation amongst AI professionals and and get them to think about AI and beyond just into their workplaces, but what else can they do with it, right? To fundamentally help them in the next 10 years or so. So next slide, please. So this is how MDDI, the ministry, looks at it in terms of the national AI strategy. They want to attract and anchor and develop more AI creators into Singapore, right? And they also want to increase the number of AI practitioners in Singapore, yeah, and build up a confident base of AI users, right? So a lot of the conversations that we are having now is shifting towards these three priorities, and we are starting to see more and more traction as it is very much, in the past, if you think about it, it was quite top-down government leading some of these efforts. Now we're also starting to see the community coming up and doing some of these things on their own, right? And I think that is something that it is a positive move. And I'm hoping to see more of that happening in the next few years. Next slide, please. Okay, so tackling the AI talent shortage, in terms of creators, right? So what Singapore has done is we've launched an AI visiting professorship to attract world-class AI researchers to collaborate with Singapore. And I think that is something that our universities as well as our research institutes continue to do, and we do well, right? Recently, someone was asking me, how do I see this in terms of cross-border talent movement? Frankly, I personally feel we should all see ourselves as one global citizen and not be too fixated on where this talent actually sits, right? Because if the AI can help us solve some of our world problems, I would be happy if I don't have to swim to work in the next 50 years. As you know, Singapore is an island, and I hope I don't have to swim to work. Yeah, so that is so I to me that is something that really does bother me. And I think it's a very short-term thinking if we see one country wins and the other country loses. Because we're all in this together, I think it's all about all of us benefiting from it. Right. So that's one. Local talent development, right? So we're investing, in terms of getting, I know there's nothing compared to you guys, everybody there seems to have 2 degrees, a master's, a PhD and whatnot. But in Singapore, that's not very common to get a second degree or even a master's degree. And it continues to be a challenge, I think. Personally, I feel it's something we can encourage our people to do better. And I hope in the next few years, we can see an uptake in the number of people who will get into research, who will get into, deeper diving into some of these, the knowledge base. So that's our own pipeline of Singaporean AI researchers. And it's looking like for RIE 2030, a big chunk of our budget will be going into this space, developing the local talent, and as well as, bringing international talent in to help develop local talent, right? Okay, the last point is on the Research and Innovation Hub. So NUS, the National University of Singapore, established the new NUS AI Institute last year to advance fundamental research, development, and application of AI technologies for public good. And this is going to be a move that we are going to see for the next 5 years, all the way to so until FY 2030. Now, I have my own comments about that, but that's a discussion for another day. Okay, next slide. In terms of practitioners, give me a sec. So I think what's exciting here is that Singapore is always very interested and willing, I would say, to invest money and put money where our mouth is. So if we say that we're interested in doing something, or you can bet you the whole of government is going to put all their effort, heart and soul into it. So it's something that we are particularly proud of. And because we are a small country, I guess it's probably a lot easier to do. So we want to enhance in terms of attracting and continuing to motivate our young talent to take on this, investing over $20 million in terms of training for the students. In terms of tertiary and continuing education, we are going to give out more AI related type scholarships for Singaporeans to pursue AI and related courses in top universities, both locally as well as internationally. And that's a big push in terms of upskilling mid-career wise, people who are already in the industry. this IMDA is going to be pouring more money into this Tesla initiative to providing pathways for individuals to transition. And I think that is something that's interesting and quite exciting. SGInnovate also is involved in this to some degree through our programs, where we do reskill and help mid-career trainees, employees who want to take on new roles. So let's say if they were in the space of aerospace engineering and they wanted to get into, robotics and AI kind of work, then certainly they can hop on to one of our programs and get reskilled on a very practical, hands-on, on-the-job type training with companies. And what's interesting about all this is that because as a government, we understand that these individuals may not have the right skills, companies won't want to bring them on board immediately, because it means me paying this person a decent amount of salary, and yet this person's not, up to the level I need them to be. So what the government has done and what we're continuing to do is that we will co-pay some of their salary, these people's salary, so that the companies then invest in doing the on-the-job training, and we defray by paying some portion of that salary. All right, next slide. Okay, so yes, I mean, fundamentally, I think baseline is about, enhancing digital literacy for all. And we're talking about everyone, from the young to the old. If you're in Singapore, you'll see there's a lot of campaigns around this in terms of safety, ensuring that individuals are able to see, what is fake news, for example, right? And to be more discerning. And I think that's one of the things that we also do well. I give you an example. When about 12 years ago, I think, if I'm not mistaken, when this concept of startup started proliferating in Singapore. 12 years ago, the term startup wasn't anywhere floating around in Singapore in terms of the local public knowledge. And literally overnight, you started to see this word startup popping up in newspapers and in common discourse. And the government even took one step beyond that. They made a TV program, television series, I think it was a 20-part episode or something like that, where it was talking about the lives of, these couple of startup founders and what they're doing, right, in the company. So that gave the general public an understanding and awareness of what a startup was. And I still remember my mom calling me up on the phone and asking me, hey, I keep reading about this startup. What the heck is it all about? So I had to explain to my mom, it's a new way and the companies, et cetera, et cetera. So I think in some ways, the same for AI, and now in this case, generative AI, it's, something that we have to educate the general public. And that's something that we continue to do well, and integrating it into AI, because a lot of the discourse at the beginning was around, is this technology going to replace me? Am I going to lose my job? I mean, that was really a question that most people had in their minds, and to some degree up to today, some people still feel threatened by this, I think. Yeah, but I would think there's less and less so as they become more aware of what AI can do, what AI possibly can't do, and how, more importantly, they can then use AI for their own benefit and not be overwhelmed by this new technology. So in terms of business, I talked about it a little bit about it, it's more about adoption. At that time, a few years back, a lot of the companies were like, oh, AI is not for me. I'm a traditional business, I will not see using this. This is not the understanding now. I think essentially, as companies see that, hey, I'm sitting on, increasingly useful data that I could then help drive some of my own business decisions. This is where, in terms of demand for jobs with people with some AI background and skills, we see an uptick in this. Next slide. Okay, so in terms of SGInnovate's talent and community programs, like I mentioned, we have some programs that basically look at how we can help talent get into the ecosystem, all the way from young talent down to mid-career, and later on we're talking about C-suite development and whatnot. but that's another discussion for another day. So at the very basic one, Summation attracts the young talent both locally and internationally to get into these new technology areas. Now AI is not a problem, but trust me, when Summation first started, it was quite difficult getting young talent to want to work in our startups and to apply for the jobs. So currently, Summation has about 1,000 applicants worldwide for close to 100 projects. And the competition is fierce, but the good thing is that everybody that's gone through Summation, close to 97% of them who've gone through Summation and graduated from their degrees have gone back to do some form of research, innovation, or a startup role. So we are quite proud of this statistic because it shows that Summation did actually then make young talent interested in continuing in this space and not go on to something else. Helix is very unique because Helix just looks into the human health potential domain. It's about translating people who are, academically inclined or in the labs and whatnot into the human health potential industry space. Because if you ask any big pharma, Lilly, GSK, and whatnot, they will tell you, and they've told me, it takes them about 2 years to literally retrain a PhD into something that's usable for their company. So Helix is a program like that where we are translating talent with a very strong academic background into industry-ready jobs. Right. And PowerX, I think I mentioned it earlier. It's a traineeship for working professionals whereby we defray some of these the cost for the companies doing this on-the-job training. And across all of these roles, right, SGInnovate's people team provides business partnering for the companies, meaning in terms of talent advisory, matching, strategic hires. So if the economic development board, when they bring in a certain company and the company needs to hire the, C something, CXO or whatnot, typically I'll be the first one they call to say, hey, Julie, do you mind? My company is coming to Singapore and we need to help them, find the first few talent. And like, if you remember a few slides ago, where we showed our database was about 155,000 people strong. Trust me, there'll be somebody in that database who would be interested in potentially a new role that's coming up. So that's business partnering. Learning is the part where it's quite interesting. If you recall, I talked about how Deep Tech Central was also a space for people to post their jobs. Now, because they do that and because people apply for the jobs, we at the back end can see whether or not there is a skill match or mismatch. Right. So if you have 10 jobs asking for 10, this particular skill, and of all the applicants who applied, only one person has that particular skill set, then there's a serious problem because your talent supply is not matching in terms of the expectations of the talent that is demanded by the companies. So that's where the learning part comes in, whereby SGInnovate then signals to the private sector, hey, and even the universities and institutes of higher learning, hey guys, you might want to focus on this particular competence or skill that seems to be missing in the talent currently. And that's something that we do quite well, actually. Okay, next slide. Okay, case studies. So over the last 5 years, these are some of the programs that we had, typically very program oriented. Now we are shifting a little bit differently in terms of stakeholder and sectorial kind of a focus. The reason why I'm doing this is because sometimes from the company's perspective, it's confusing. Because the Summation team will reach out to company A and the PowerX team will be reaching out to the same company A, and same likewise for business partnering and whatnot. So it's a little bit different now. We just have one point of contact, a particular group reaching out to company A and then basically talking to company A, saying exactly what is it that you need, and then from there we are able to cater the solutions and provide the best fit for you. So that's how we want to see it. In terms of young talent as well, in the past, it was quite disconnected. how I put it across, is that if you can imagine, all our different entities in Singapore are holding on to different pipes of a very long talent pipeline. And first, they are not connected, meaning from MOE, Ministry of Education, the schools is not connected to, industry, etc., etc. So it's not connected, and worse, the pipes are of different diameter. So even if you connected them, there's a lot of leakage. So we want to avoid this from a talent perspective. And so across the board for this next tranche of RE 2030, all of us have come together and we are aligning, and we are making sure our diameter is about the right size so that in terms of the leakage and the investment that we pump in from a very young talent perspective, we don't lose them when they go to university and when they start working. Okay, next slide, please. So in terms of the AI specifically talent numbers, it's not going to be very big because, like I said, AI is not the only thing that I look at. We look at many other things. But just zooming in, we have about 175 AI trainees and apprentices placed with our companies to date, which I think is about roughly the last 5 years or so. Not a lot, but we think that these are the right hires, of which 50 of them have taken up full-time roles. Now you do have to bear in mind that of the 175, quite a lot of them are still in universities, and the reason is that we want to attract them to work in a startup before the lure of the big tech companies come in, and then we lose them forever. So the idea is that if you give them the opportunity to see what it's like working in a startup, and then they have an inkling, an idea, and even if they choose to join a big company, big tech MNC or whatnot, subsequently the door is always open. They can always come back to work in a startup and vice versa. So that's how we see it. So in terms of in 2025 alone, 75 listed placements, over 60% of them are AI related or data science related. This, if I look back a few years ago, it's fundamentally a big shift. At the time, I can tell you honestly, I think it was only a handful of jobs that had AI or data science stated as a job scope. So this is a big jump. In terms of the full-time AI roles, we have supported as well. There has been a big jump from single digit to now about 95. Okay, next slide.
And Juliana, if I can just ask you if we can be mindful of the time a little bit. I know you
Sorry.
have more slides, but it would be great if we can also make some time for the forum part after. But next slide comes now.
Okay, so basically this is just some of the startups that we work with. I won't go into detail, but I think this would be just to give you an indication and a rough idea of the space they are in: fintech, healthcare, and agri-tech. Next slide. Like I said earlier, right? AI can be slapped on any domain. So this is the community involvement. These are some of the older pictures that I got the team. Thank you, by the way, Chris and Nicolette, for putting this together. At the very beginning, it was about building awareness and seeding communities. Now it's a lot different. It's about learning, applications. So tomorrow, I think we have one on AMD together with VLLM, talking about some of these things. Okay, next slide. Yes, the ones I was talking about. So we have, NVIDIA, and then, VLLM, AMD, some are more technical workshops, and intertwined with these technical workshops, after that, as a follow-on, we also have meet-up groups to come in and have chats with these people so that the community gets stronger as a whole and people know people. Okay, next. Okay, so yay, I've reached the last slide. So basically, if you're listening in and you think that could be something, this could be an area that you're interested in talking to us about, feel free to reach out to us and my team anytime. If you're in Singapore, I ask that you come by, swing by, we can have a chat and talk about some of these collaborations that we could be working on. Thank you.
Well, Juliana, thank you so much for this. And of course, we'll prepare to also be able to send out the slides and share it afterwards, if that's okay with you as well. So people actually can reach out if they're in your part of Asia. Again, Thank you so much. And I also want to say thank you to everyone who was listening in for this part. And for you who are part of the forum, we will now open the second link to Zoom. So in your calendar invitations, you have the second part. So we hope to see most of you joining us there, and also you, Juliana, so we can take some Q&A. But for now, thank you so much and see you soon.
Thank you guys. Bye.